Hello, my name is Lauren and welcome to the Theoretical YouTube channel where I have a confession to make. I don't actually hate Scrappy-Doo, but maybe that's because he wasn't in any of my childhood Scooby-Doo memories. I grew up on the direct-to-disc movies and the 2000s reboot of the show, and Scrappy just doesn't prominently feature in either of those two titles. In fact, the only place I did know him from was the Cartoon Network website and an online game called Scooby-Doo and the Attack of the Vampire Pumpkinheads, which has since been taken down and is no longer available, but did include a version of Scrappy as a sidekick to Scooby.
Let me at him! Let me at him!
Why is this? What happened to make one of Scooby-Doo's most iconic and recognizable characters also its most hated? Why was Scrappy-Doo erased from the franchise? Well, you all asked for more Scooby-Doo content, and I'm killing time investigating a theory on the insidious truth about Velma Dinkley. So this is a brief history of Scrappy-Doo. Okay, so canonically, Scrappy-Doo is a character in the Scooby-Doo franchise and is a puppy during the time period where the Mystery Gang is most active. He's a Great Dane like his uncle Scooby-Doo and hangs out with the gang, following them on adventures and solving mysteries. I assume you've seen Scooby-Doo and get the gist of the show. And before you start pitching your own dark theories here, Scrappy is not an orphan. He is the son of Scooby's sister, Ruby-Doo, and just hangs out with his uncle a lot. Character-wise, he was introduced into the series as a foil for Scooby and Shaggy's personalities. Where they're cowardly, he is bold. They are older, he is younger. He's also more well-spoken and outgoing.
That monster doesn't look incapable of anything!
Oh, a sneak attack, eh? I gotta warn you, you're dealing with Scrappy-Doo!
Of course, this strong personality is also the reason cited by fans who hate him for being so annoying. And it's not really hard to see why his high-pitched voice and penchant for getting everyone into trouble made him an unpopular addition to the story. Interestingly, immediately after his debut in the series, ABC, the network that was airing the show, asked the creators to make him a less strong personality, because he's constantly looking to pick fights and was seen as a bad role model for children.
All right, shadow creature, you're dealing with Scrappy-Doo now! Prepare to splat!
So they asked the creators to make Scrappy less scrappy. And honestly, I would be really interested to see what a more hardcore version of this character would have looked like, and if fans would have been more endeared to him. Part of what makes him annoying is that he's a lot of talk with very little follow-through, but it seems like that was by design. Anyway, Scrappy-Doo was first introduced into the franchise in 1979 during the 4th incarnation of the Scooby-Doo morning cartoon. This was the 3rd consecutive reboot of the series, appropriately named Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo. And he appeared in the first episode of that series, The Scarab Lives, to overwhelming positive critical reception. Basically, the showrunners had decided that they needed a character who would instigate the Mystery Gang's involvement in mysteries. And because Scrappy is a less passive character, he was able to get the gang into trouble, thus kickstarting the plots. Scrappy was so popular and raised the show's ratings enough that the next year, when they rebooted the series again, the creators chose to restructure the entire show around his inclusion. In 1980, ABC aired the 5th Scooby-Doo series, also named Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo, but in a slightly different time slot. But this reboot was really similar in name only because it was pretty different than the previous iterations of the show. For instance, it dropped its main cast down to just Scooby, Shaggy, and Scrappy. Scrappy-Doo was so popular that he replaced Fred, Daphne, and Velma. Yeah, this Scrappy-Doo! The show was also broken up into 7-minute arcs that were later repackaged into half-hour episodes for the show's syndication, and also had more of a focus on real supernatural villains rather than guys in masks. Wow, you were super fooled, right? In 1983, they rebooted the show again under the name The New Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo Show, which was pretty similar to the previous show, but also added Daphne back into the main cast. And each episode consisted of 2 separate storylines rather than 3.5-hour slot. Basically the Phineas and Ferb structure of episode writing. In 1984, rather than completely rebooting the series again, thank God, they retitled the show The New Scooby-Doo Mysteries, but kept the continuity from the previous year. Fred and Velma also made occasional appearances in this show after having been off the air for 5 years. But they were pretty much gone again for the 1985 reboot of the show, the infamous 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, which not only featured Scrappy, but also Flim Flam!
Uncle Scooby, Shaggy, did you find anything? Oh, I love charades. Is it a movie?
Yay! Everybody's least favorite Scooby-Doo characters all together in one easy-to-mock place! This was also the last series in the franchise's consecutive run from its premiere in 1969. In other words, after its cancellation became the first time in over a decade that there was not a new episode of a Scooby-Doo cartoon on a Saturday morning time slot. Because apparently, rebooting a show no less than 7 times does not discount a continuous streak. When the franchise did return in 1988 with a pup named Scooby-Doo, it did not include Scrappy at all. Perhaps this is continuity-wise because Scrappy wouldn't have been alive yet when Scooby was a puppy, or more likely he was quietly retired due to fans publicly disliking the character so much. Which would soon become a strange meta-joke in itself, but we'll get there in a minute. Scrappy only made a handful of appearances in the franchise's movies, and really only in the 80s when he was still on TV. He's in Scooby-Doo Meets the Boo Brothers, Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, and Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf. He does not appear in any of the 90s Scooby-Doo content, including the direct-to-DVD movies like Zombie Island. He did appear in the Archie's comic run of the Scooby-Doo 90s comics as a main character, but was eventually written out due to fan backlash / disinterest. And when the series was rebooted again in 2002 by Cartoon Network, Scrappy was also not in What's New Scooby-Doo. However, 2002 was also the year that the first live-action Scooby-Doo film was released in theaters. And while this is a 20-year-old movie, I do feel like I need to give a quick spoiler warning here in 3, 2, 1, where Scrappy-Doo is revealed to be the twist villain of the story.
Puppy power!
Which was a really interesting decision for a couple of reasons. The first of which being that it was James Gunn's? Did you guys know that James Gunn wrote the screenplays for the live-action Scooby-Doo movies? The Guardians of the Galaxy guy? What? Anyway, Gunn went on record to say that he really hated the character of Scrappy-Doo and didn't even want to include him in the early drafts. I saw one source that said that early drafts of the script implied that the gang had previously euthanized Scrappy, but I also couldn't verify this anywhere else, so. Other reason this was an interesting choice was because of Scrappy's motivations in the film. He was mad at the Mystery Gang for evolving, having new adventures, and abandoning him.
What's the idea? You can't do this to me! People adore me!
Which is very meta if you look at the way the franchise had quietly been shoving Scrappy out of the limelight for the previous decade. This character went from being a load-bearing tentpole of the series to a forgotten relic of a bygone time. I'd be mad too. Maybe not turned into a horrific monster bent on destroying everything mad, but still pretty mad. Of course, for here on out, it only became worse for the character. Rather than being retired and gracefully forgotten by the franchise, the studios now occasionally dig him up to use him as a punching bag. You can no longer mention Scrappy-Doo in a form of Scooby-Doo content without coyly winking at the camera and mocking the very idea of the character. On the lighter side, he has brief cameo appearances in Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King and that one Supernatural episode. I see you pretending you got a sliver, where he has no lines and is just included as an Easter egg. But on the other hand, there's this scene from Mystery Incorporated.
Wow, I haven't seen...
Look away, Daphne. We all promised each other that we would never speak of him. Not ever.
Where the mere sight of his statue revolts Fred and Daphne. Like, Flim Flam's here too, but at least he gets some sympathy.
So tragic. 25 to life is a long stretch, even for a preteen con artist.
Even earlier, there was this television bumper from 2001 when Cartoon Network started airing new Scooby-Doo content again.
Then I've been here longer than all of you! Longer than you, and you!
Oh, mama.
Where Scrappy has a full-on temper tantrum because he's not getting enough attention and then declares that this new network isn't for him.
Cartoon Network, the best place for cartoons.
Not for me! Not for me, man!
Thus giving him a reason to not appear in the new content, I guess. And in the 2019 film that revisited the idea of the 13 Ghosts, a sequel we were all apparently waiting for, Scrappy is completely erased from the show's continuity, a series where he was originally like 25% of the cast. He gets like one throwaway name drop reference from Flim Flam, but then Velma, who wasn't even in the original show, asks, "What's a Scrappy?"
Well, I guess the gang's all here.
Except Scrappy.
What's a Scrappy?
So why? Why did Scrappy-Doo go from being an immense success and major feature of the franchise to a self-deprecating in-joke? Obvious answer is that fans just didn't like the character. He was said to be annoying, he didn't fit into the world, and here's my own speculation. Scooby-Doo is inherently an easier character to suspend your disbelief for than Scrappy. The most remarkable thing about Scooby is that he can talk, and he's not particularly well spoken.
Scrappy? We're gonna catch us a monster, huh? A monster?
So in a franchise supposedly guided by logic, this is an easier condition for us to accept. And I think this is also why Scrappy's introduction into the series coincided with the more supernatural elements of the show. From Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo to the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, the series that involve Scrappy all have a real emphasis and focus on supernatural monsters rather than guys in masks. There's obviously exceptions like Zombie Island or Cyber Chase where he did not appear, but on the whole there is a real pattern. Scrappy himself is a more supernatural character than Scooby. Therefore, rather than being incongruous with the rest of the franchise, I think that Scrappy-Doo was a symptom of the experimentation that it took to keep Scooby-Doo on the air. But no one likes change. So whatever subconscious issues that fans had with the changes in the structure of the Scooby-Doo cartoons might have been projected onto this new character, whose bold and outgoing personality made him an easy target for disdain. Overall, Scrappy-Doo was not a bad character. He was, and will continue to be, a dated one. Hey, if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you are subscribed, good job! Leave a comment, solve a mystery or something. I'm not good to calls to action. You can also follow us on Twitter at @theory_central to catch all the updates as we continue to search for the insidious truth about Velma Dinkley. And support us on Patreon if... Actually, I don't care. I'm not asking for your money. Just your eyeballs on my face every couple of weeks and your kind words in the comment section down below. And also not so kind words about why Scrappy-Doo is actually the worst, and so am I for defending him. But that's it for today. Thanks for watching, let me at him, and I'll see you later.
Let me at him!